What's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day, I guess it is. I'm Schuyler Callihan. That is Christopher Hall. And another episode here of Between the Ears, our final one of the non-game week. I know Sunday's technically the end of the week, but we're counting it as the start of game week. So we got to get into some predictions. We really haven't talked much about the Big 12 or college football playoff or any of that stuff. We'll get to that on Sunday. So you'll kind of maybe get a feel for where we think West Virginia lies in terms of that, probably by today. But still come back on Sunday. We'll talk about West Virginia. We'll integrate them into the conversation. But we're going to talk about the best conference in college football. And maybe I'm stretching that, but in terms of depth, right? It's top to bottom. It's definitely the best. You can make a case about the SEC or the Big Ten being the best in terms of they're going to have the most national championship contenders, all that and all that other stuff. But I think from 1 to 16 or top to bottom, without a doubt, the best league in the country. And that's where we're going to start our conversation today: is how many teams do we feel like can win the conference? We'll get into our preseason power rankings. We'll talk WVU, dark horse, and all that stuff here in a minute. But let's start with how many teams can win the Big 12. Chris, I'll let you go first because I got to marinate on this. I'm kind of back and forth between a couple of numbers, so I'll let you go first.
I'm gonna just go seven. Probably a really big number, but
That is pretty deep. Yeah.
when you look at this, I mean, when you look at this Big 12, everyone has question marks coming into the season. You know, Utah's I guess you want to say the heavy favorite, but they have a lot of
Yeah.
questions coming into the season as well. So their hopes are completely rely on Cam Rising, who missed all of last season. They're hoping he's fully recovered. Hopefully, he still has the mobility that he had in 2022. So, and really, I'm adding that 17, being generous with Arizona strictly because of their quarterback. I don't know if Brennan's the answer for them there as the head coach coming
It's a
from
weird hire.
San Jose State. I'm not sold on it, but purely from the quarterback standpoint, and of course, I'm going to contradict myself with Colorado.
Got
Maybe
to
not,
bring
maybe
Prime
not,
into this conversation now.
maybe not. But strictly from a quarterback
Well,
situation, I think it gives them a chance with what they're returning. But I'm being probably very generous with seven. I'd
I,
be honest with you.
I know you just don't want to get on Prime's hit list. That's the only reason you threw
No,
him.
Colorado's not in my top seven. That's
Oh,
the
they're
thing.
not. They're not.
No,
Okay.
no,
So
no,
maybe
no.
Christopher Hall is added on to that hit list, but
Yeah, I
we'll
doubt he's
see.
paying attention.
But I don't know. I mean, seven in theory sounds like the right number around that, but that's just a lot. Like I can't get myself to think that there's that many teams that can win the title. Contend, yeah, I think you're seven, maybe even eight. But I think in
Yeah,
terms
I
of,
mean that's contention. Yeah, I mean if your seven teams
I
contending, yeah,
mean,
then that means they can
yeah,
win the title. So
I
I'm
just
not
don't.
like I said, it's probably more around five or six, but I'm throwing in Arizona. But really, when you start naming teams, you can be like, well, and you look into it like, oh, like okay, like there's no dominant team here. Like if you want to
Yeah,
pick a dominant team, probably got to go Oklahoma State. They're like fourth in the country in returning production on offense and
consistent.
defense, and their defense wasn't very good last year, but they returned 10 starters. Their D coordinators in this for a second season. You bring Ollie Gordon and Alan Bowman back. Mike Gundy's been around. They get Utah at home. So really, with Oklahoma State, it's been non-conference early, but when they get going in conference, they've been fine. So they've been to the conference championship 2 out of the last 3 seasons. Like they've been there, they know how to get there. So to me, if you're really picking an early favorite, it's got to be Oklahoma State.
I mean, I don't want to give my ranking away, but I think there's some competition there. But I would say teams that can actually win the league, I would say four. And we'll get to that probably into my preseason power ranking. But I think four, maybe five. I think the fifth is kind of depending on the team that I have there at five, whether or not they're able to be consistent every single week on both sides of the ball. Um, but I don't know. I mean, it's a really challenging league, and the thing about it is like the 4 or 5 teams that I believe can win the league, even if they don't, like, they're still gonna have a chance to get into the college football playoff just because there's gonna be so many good quality wins on the table for all of these teams. And you're not going to have that, oh my gosh, they lost to Vanderbilt, they lost to Rutgers. You don't have that in this conference. Now, Cincinnati, Arizona State, probably the consensus two bottom teams in the league, but it's still not quite that low because I'm sure Cincinnati, Arizona State, they're going to come up and beat somebody that they probably shouldn't either or two. So I just think there's a lot of quality wins out there. I don't know, like I said, if there's a national championship contender among this league. If there is, you're probably talking Utah, Oklahoma State, but I think it's just the depth of this league is what's so impressive. So let's go and get into our preseason power rankings. We'll go ahead and start here. Just briefly talk about the bottom half of the league, 16 through 9. You can go ahead and talk about those teams that you have here. We'll throw it up on the screen so you can got to read through them. But any of these teams 9 through 16 that you slotted that you believe could maybe end up finishing a lot higher than what you have them ranked, or maybe a team that is got a chance to maybe even finish lower than what you have them here in this bottom half.
9 through 16. You're making me count here. I don't
Yep.
even know at this point.
That's right, because he doesn't see he can't see it on the screen right now. We've got it up on the in our text messages, but
I'll go Colorado. That's really the only one I can see out of
making
that
a move.
group. Yeah. And that's because again, quarterback play. And this is where I'll contradict myself from earlier. I don't know if Colorado, if the quarterback play. Now they do have Travis Hunter. They have added some pieces, but it's different when you're going to year two in a power conference and at an FCS level or whatever other level, unless you're at like an Alabama or something that can just bring in a bunch of recruits quickly and you can quickly turn it around. But Sanders is definitely legit. Hunter is definitely legit. So if they can kind of piece it together, I think that's really the only team that I see at that bottom that can probably climb their way up.
I would probably say I'm going to go out of from my 9 through 16 here. I'm going to go with Texas Tech. It's just been a like we talked about it the other day. Joey McGuire's just had such bad luck. I mean, they've had so many injuries. Tyler Shuck had what 2 straight years of injuries. They've not been able to figure out the quarterback position because of it. They've got a really good running back in Taj Brooks, maybe one of the best running backs in the league. If they can get average play out of Baron Morton, they can definitely finish in the top half of this league. So it's not a far fetched idea to think they can go from 11 to 8. So I'd probably say Texas Tech. If I really want to get stretchy here, I mean really stretchy. Maybe Houston at 14. And it sounds really crazy to say that because you look at them in their roster and they look like a massive rebuild. But I can't ever count Willie Fritz out. And when you look at the coaches that come into this league from lower levels, whether it be Chris Kleiman or Lance Leipold, they come in and they have success pretty early on. And I know this is kind of a different task that Willie Fritz has taken on here, so I'm not saying that they're going to finish in the top 5 or anything, but there's a team that can maybe hang around, steal some games, catch people by surprise, and maybe get into the 8th spot. I'd say maybe Houston if I really want to make it interesting, but Texas Tech, Houston, that's probably it for me. As far as teams that I think could maybe just see the bottom fall out, I'd say Baylor at number 12. I don't think they're going to fall behind Cincinnati or Arizona State, but there's a chance. I mean, this is a group that won 3 games a year ago. If things start off very slow for them again this year, that could kind of unravel quickly. Maybe there's a midseason coaching change. Like there's a whole lot of things that could go wrong, probably more so than that can go right for Baylor in 2024. So that's the team that could really fall.
Yeah, I'm gonna go TCU with that one. Uh,
That could
prom-
fall. Interesting.
yeah, I mean they're already down there pretty much down there pretty low on my list, but I think they can really even slide further. I know Sonny Dykes had that good run. I think that was year 1 for him, right? Got the best of both
Yeah.
worlds with Gary Patterson's team. Had a great defense because of Gary Patterson's team, and then he's a great offensive mind. But you just look at it throughout his history, he's not been a great head coach. He hasn't had great head coaching stuff. So maybe they can turn around this year, but don't see it. You know, I just don't see TCU really making a move here in the coming years while he's at the helm.
Top half of the league. We'll go ahead and throw these ones up now. So we're going to reveal the first four. We're going to put some dramatics to this. We'll get to our top four here in a minute. So our 8 through 5, I've got Arizona, Kansas, UCF, and Iowa State. Again, with this UCF thing, like I'm starting to kind of understand more about why there's hype there. They've got talent at skill positions. They've got a lot coming back at certain parts of their defense, especially in the defensive back room. KJ Jefferson, there's a lot to like there. I just again with depth is a major concern with me with this team and all these other newish teams that made the jump up from Group of 5 to Power 4. I can't go higher than 7 with them. And kind of the same thing with Kansas. I get the preseason love with them. Jalen Daniels is great when he's healthy. How much is he going to be healthy this year? I don't know. And because of that, I can't put them higher than 6. Arizona at 5. That's just a team that I really can't figure out. I think Noah Fafita, Tataroa McMillan, they're a tremendous duo. But like you just mentioned, like Brent Brennan comes in. What is he going to be able to do with this team? It's not necessarily the same group they had a year ago that won 10 games in a pretty competitive Pac-12, but are they going to be able to kind of take that step and be a top Big 12 team now? Or is there going to be a learning curve that they're going to go through? So there's just a lot of unknowns with that. So that's my 5 through 8: Arizona, Kansas, UCF, and Iowa State.
Yeah, let's see. I have K State at 5, I believe, and then Arizona, Kansas, and Tech. Yeah, kind of touch on what you said about Tech. They've had some bad luck over the years. The last couple of years, the McGuire, I think they can kind of turn it around, get their footing this season, and rack up some quality wins. Kansas lost their offensive coordinator. I've probably talked about this enough with the Penn State talking about Penn State coming up. Kind of curious to see how they bounce back. Can they get that going quickly? And you mentioned Daniel's injury problems. A lot of question marks there. That's why I really didn't have them higher than I did. In Arizona, it just goes back to the quarterback situation there, but probably still a little high on them. Was kind of back and forth on them in Arizona. I just took kid from Arizona over Daniels, and then K State, Kleiman. They have a lot of holes to fill, obviously, with Will Howard, but Avery Johnson's supposed to be good. Just not enough sample size with him to really propel them into the top 4. But Kleiman's done obviously an amazing job. They have a tough schedule this season, so it'll be interesting to kind of see how they bounce back with losing Will Howard. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they only bring back like 50% of their production or something like that. So, Kansas State to me is always in the mix. I think if you kind of look around nationally, they're in the top 3, and that's just from the success of Kleiman. They were able to beat Oklahoma, I think, 2 of the last 3 meetings. So they've been able to beat some of the best teams, but they haven't been able to, consistency's kind of evaded them. Some of it's just like talent, some of it's been injury, but they're always going to be in the mix. Of me, I mean, we're really starting to get to that 5-6 there. We're like, all right, like this is
You
where
can start to
really
make
these
a
are all
case
kind
for
of
some of these
contenders.
guys.
This could be where it gets interesting.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. Like some of these teams here, like Arizona, that's the team where I'm like, they can maybe win the Big 12, but I just don't know. I don't know that they have the consistency to get through the entire league
They've
schedule,
lost
get to
too much.
Dallas.
They've lost way too much, and I
Yeah,
think when how much of it is a culture change to make them lose momentum? You know what I
right.
mean? Like, there's a lot of questions going into that. Like, a new coach coming in with the expectations after what they did last year, could have put a lot of pressure on the team. So how they handle all that's huge this offseason. So one thing goes wrong, finger pointing can start week 1. So
Oh yeah,
can't
absolutely.
can't be interesting because these guys haven't been in the trenches yet. So
And with Kansas, like, I'm kind of probably sounding like a little bit of an idiot here, but I know Kansas isn't the same Kansas they used to be for eons, but it just feels weird for me to put Kansas higher than 6 on a Big 12 football power ranking. Like, we had them stuck down there at the bottom of the basement for how many years? And until they go and actually do something of significance, I just can't go much higher. I understand the hype. Lance Leipold is a terrific coach, maybe the best coach in the Big 12 or second best, third best, whatever you want to call it. But you have to have something to back that up. Right now, they don't have that. They just have signs of progress, and even though they've turned it around,
they've got quality wins too. I mean, it's a matter of
yeah,
can they stay healthy,
for
and
an
I don't think
entire
they have.
season.
Yeah, and they really just haven't had the depth to keep up yet. So it's
Exactly.
another thing where it takes time to build that. Where if you lose somebody, someone can step in, and not
That's
necessarily
where,
take over, but can somebody else from the opposite side of the field step up and make bigger plays? So it's not just about the player stepping up on that side; it's about everybody stepping up, and they just really haven't had that depth yet. So when you lose the
yeah,
Daniels, it's been catastrophic for them because they don't have anybody else on the team with that caliber. Now, I mean, that's a high level, but that's what makes these. The Oklahoma that's won. I'm racked off how many consecutive Big 12 titles. They just
yeah,
had playmakers everywhere. So if someone was out for a week or two, they had other guys they can go to, and Kansas just isn't there yet.
yeah, and that's kind of why I'm back and forth about whether it's 5 or 6 or 7 because there's just there's just so many scenarios that could end up there. I mean, who is the fifth and sixth team? I mean, that's just because I have Arizona and Kansas doesn't mean it's going to be that, but you could go either way with it. And I don't know. I mean, again, too, Jalen Daniels goes out. You don't have a guy like Jason Bean, as at least as of right now, that can come in and step in and just win games for you. That's what they had. They kind of had a little bit of a luxury of having a very good, experienced backup quarterback. They don't have that right now. So I don't know. Let's go ahead and get into our top four. We'll go one by one here. We don't have to hit on these very deeply, but I'm going to do this to intensify the dramatics, but not too much here for West Virginia fans because number 4 is my place here for the West Virginia Mountaineers. I think their ceiling is probably 2. And that sounds like a stretch, but I think it's definitely doable. It's a tough schedule, but I don't know that they could get all the way up to 1. I mean, it's just an absolutely brutal stretch of games to open up Big 12 play. Those first 5, if they can just get out of that 3-2 or better, I think you're breathing a huge sigh of relief. But I think 4 is a really good spot for them. I know a lot of people are going to have them somewhere in the middle of the pack, maybe even at 5, 6, or 7. But for me, I think 4 makes a lot of sense for what they bring back on both sides of the ball. You have a top quarterback in the league, in Garrett Green. He's got to be at least worth some significance. So I think you got to put West Virginia at least at number 4. That's where I'm going.
My number 4 is Iowa State. Probably surprise to some, but you
Surprising
look
to me, I'll tell you that.
you look at what they bring back. Rocco Beck's coming in second year. The defense was formidable. They got some studs in the middle. So to me, when you start looking at the top 4, it's about the coaching. Matt Campbell's
Yeah.
proven it. Setback last year, but they still went to a bowl game, and they did with a freshman quarterback. Not the running game that they had. They brought in a transfer. Oh, hold on. Sky's got me has too much on my screen here. Um, yeah, Abu Sama is
Yeah.
back. He averaged 7 yards a carry. So I think with that group, they're always gonna be tough in the trenches, and obviously you have to win the line of scrimmage. So to me, I think this is gonna be the surprise for some people to out of the Big 12 because they were kind of quiet last year. They weren't doing the things that they did in previous years. People kind of sleep on them. Matt Campbell didn't go anywhere. They're going to have a great defense. I think Rocco takes a big step forward, and I think they really stack up some wins and really are like I won't say the talk of the Big 12 in the November, but they're going to be in discussion to make a run to Dallas.
Yeah, I have Iowa State much lower. I obviously have them at 8, but I think that there's definitely a reason, for them to be in consideration for a top 4 spot. But again, when you're talking 4th rate in this league, you're talking this much difference, really. I
Yeah.
mean, There's so many similarities with these teams. Number 3, I'm going with Kansas State. This is a team again that I have really loved, but have been very high on the past 2 years. I picked them to go to the Big 12 title each of the last 2 years. Still feel good about them, but I don't know because about Avery Johnson. 5-star quarterback. They think that he's going to be an upgrade for them over Will Howard. I wouldn't think that would take much because I didn't really particularly think Will Howard was that great. So I don't know why he's getting all the love at Ohio State, but that's a whole nother conversation.
We know why.
Exactly.
He'll
But
probably look a lot better with more talent around him
yeah,
too, but
that's true. That's
that's
true.
that's another
Well, so would Garrett
that's
Green. So if
that's
Garrett Green
another
was surrounded
discussion.
by 5-star talents, he would be a Heisman front runner right now.
Yeah.
So,
Talent
but
around you can make you look better than what you are. We see it all the time when guys make the leap to the NFL, and you see like, where did this guy come from? He only,
yeah.
the guy at Buffalo.
Khalil Mack.
No, the quarterback at Buffalo. Why can't I think of his
Josh
name?
Allen. Josh Allen.
Josh
I thought
Allen
you were
came
talking
out
about
of Wyoming.
University of
Everybody,
Buffalo.
everybody thought, who this kid play? Well, he didn't have the
Yeah.
talent around him as everybody else, but he's still pretty good NFL quarterback.
Hey, he's not too shabby. He's not too
Yeah, he's
shabby.
not bad.
But yeah, I've got Kansas State at 3. I just, even though I have concerns about what Avery will do in his first year as a starter, Chris Kleiman's too good of a coach.
Yeah, I got West Virginia at 3. I think they are 100% going to be in the mix. But
More
when you're talking,
meaningful football in November.
yeah. So, but I think a lot of that's going to, some of those losses. I think when we kind of did this, worked it out. They were early in that 5-game gauntlet there. Kind of eases off a bit as you go down the stretch, but I think that's where they kind of put it together and really put themselves in the conversation. But I think that loss at Oklahoma State will be the difference for them because that when you're playing the top teams that are in contention, if you lose for them, you're going to lose a tiebreaker, and I think that's really where the difference is going to be with them.
Number 2, this will reveal my winner, so I'll just go ahead and throw up the top 2. Oklahoma State and Utah. I've got Utah winning the league. I really kind of went back and forth on this, probably more than you would think. I know Utah, like you said, is the very heavy favorite. It's almost like the consensus at this point. They're just a tough physical team that just finds ways to win games. It's not always the prettiest. Sometimes it's very, very ugly and hard to watch, but they are really good fundamentally. They know how to win games. Kyle Whittingham is, in my mind, one of the top coaches of college football, maybe top 3 or top 4 in terms of just the situation he's in, what he's got to work with, the resources compared to some of these other coaches, what they have. He's up there. And you could say the exact same things and apply it to Mike Gundy. So I think those two teams really kind of copycat each other in a lot of ways, or mimic each other, I should say. And that's why I think it's kind of a coin flip. I don't really think it matters who I pick here, 1 or 2, because I think this is who you're going to end up seeing in the Big 12 championship game. And it's just a matter of who comes out and plays cleaner football that day in Arlington. So Oklahoma State, number 2, Utah, my preseason favorite to win it.
Yeah, I have Utah finishing at the top of the league in the standings during the regular season. If you look at their schedule, it's a pretty weak schedule for the Big 12. They
Yeah.
don't fit. The only team they have to play is at Oklahoma State. I actually have Oklahoma State winning that game. But it goes back to the problem with Oklahoma State. They haven't been as consistent as of late, and you always wonder. They right after Utah they play at Kansas State, and I think they pick up a loss there, and I think they may pick up a lot, a random loss like they finish at Colorado, home game versus Texas Tech. That's an old Big 12 rivalry. At TCU is not going to be easy. I think Baylor could be a win that Baylor gets. It kind of brings Aranda back to life. And then at BYU is definitely no slouch. So I kind of thought maybe that they'd lose that BYU game where Utah is only lost to Oklahoma State. But I will say that I think by the end of it in Arlington, I think Oklahoma State is actually the one that uh,
Hoisted.
gets them again. Yep, gets them again. And they like I said before, they've been there 2 out of the last 3 years. So they've been there, done it. I think that Utah game on at home, a little too much confidence going at Kansas State. We talked about Kansas State. I think they'll be formidable enough. Again, Oklahoma State struggled last couple of years with consistency, but they bring a lot back, and you kind of wonder playing at Kansas State with that defense The way it struggled early in the year, I think that that might be the game where they kind of turn it around, and then they kind of bounce back against West Virginia. But going at BYU, different environment, that elevation, not used to it, that could be another trip up for them. But they end up holding it at the end.
Can West Virginia win this league?
Absolutely,
I mean, like
especially if they,
how
if they if they
close?
could pick up that win at Oklahoma State. Start thinking about some banners. Start thinking about some things because
You got
when you
West
when you look
Virginia
at
at
when you
3.
look at Utah, they're talking about Cam Rising. He didn't play last year. Is he going to be as mobile as he was? Um, they've lost. They lost. I think they only returned 2 starters from the offensive line. It was one of the worst in pass protection. So when you got an injured quarterback, how's that look? And especially if he's not mobile all of a sudden. So they've got questions. The thing is with it Whittingham, he's been a consistent winner. Even uh, even without Cam Rising last year, they weren't great offensively. They still finished with 8 wins, I believe, 8, 9 wins, something like that. So it's not like they were awful. That was a down year for them. So they're looking to bounce back with their stars. They bring their running back that missed all last season. They're hoping to bring a tight end back, but it's looking like he may be done. His career may be done. They got another formidable tight end, so it's really for the Utah. Their schedule's so much easier than the rest of them. It feels like so they don't have play a lot of top teams, so they may be able to skate by. Where Oklahoma State, we've seen them, they play better at the end of the year, so it's kind of where I give them a nod, even though they're going to end up beating them twice though.
So you have West Virginia at 3. I have them at 4. But what's the gap for you? Like how much of a gap is there between West Virginia, Oklahoma State, and Utah? Is it enough that like you could almost throw West Virginia's hat in the same ring as them, or does some stuff have to go right for them? They need some breaks to go their way. Like how close of a gap is that for you?
It's very close. I would say before I did more Utah research, I thought Utah would probably be more physical, bigger, stronger. Just kind of how that Minnesota bowl game worked in a sense. Like,
Oh,
what you just didn't have anything. Almost kind of
you
like
got to
that.
bring
Maybe
that
not to
game
that
up,
much
that
degree,
game.
but where they were just they had
Golly.
nobody returning. It was just a
I did
bad
not expect a
representation really of
Minnesota
that team.
Bowl
But
reference.
the Utah's they've got a lot of questions. I think really though the gap has shortened, but at the same time, it just goes back to Whittingham has been so long there for so long with that culture. They just kind of they're not really rebuilding. They're reloading with what guys that fit in their system. So it's a little different feel out of them. Where I think even though I have Oklahoma State winning it, I feel West Virginia matches up better with Oklahoma State because they've played them every year. They know what
Yeah.
to expect. That's something that they've planned for the last 5 6 years. Utah is kind of you know it kind of mirrors, I guess, like you said, kind of mirrors Oklahoma State in a sense, but it's just the he's just Whittingham's just been there so long, so they know the
2 decades.
formula of success. So I mean,
He's
I
been
think he's the
there.
longest tenured coach in the league right now, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. I
it
mean, he's
makes
been there since I
it makes a
was.
big deal when you have success like that. The guys believe they come in immediately believing because of your success. So I think they'll bounce back, but it really does depend on their stars, and I think they have an answer at receiver, but they got some questions in the secondary. And really, when you start looking at a lot of these teams that West Virginia plays, they've got a lot of questions in the secondary. So everyone's kind of in the same boat, and I think that's why you can look around and say, well, this team's got question here, this team's got question there. Can they find answers? If that team finds answers in that specific room, then it's going to give them a leg up. Where not everybody's going to find answers, so we'll probably by the time we hit October, we may have a few of them.
Yeah. I mean, some years it's just clear as day. Like you get to June, July, you start to see all the pieces kind of come together in terms of what teams have, transfer portals, all those guys are already in place. And most years you look at it like, yeah, Texas, Oklahoma, and years past, of course, Oklahoma State, and then everybody else. This year, I mean, you like we've talked about it in the beginning. I mean, you're talking 6, 7, 8 teams that probably believe they should be in Arlington at the end of the year. So maybe even 9 if you want to get real deep with it. And when you have that many teams that believe they can get there, that just makes the games on Saturdays that much more interesting. You don't have all these blowouts going on. And I think, was it Neil that talked about it fairly recently about how there's only, I think the Big 12 had the most one score games in the last X amount of years or something like that. Now you had these other teams that come in from the Pac 12, it's only going to make it even tighter. So,
Yeah,
the,
if you go back and look at the games like the K State from last year, Iowa State, their losses were only like one possession games.
yeah,
They weren't like getting blown
West
out. So
Virginia on a Hail Mary, for
yeah,
example.
so well they got blown out by Oklahoma, but the teams
Yeah.
that they're coming back, they didn't. So they were in every game. So when yeah, these are all going to be tightly contested, and these minute details that Utah doesn't have any solidified safeties or corners. Like yeah, those are answers. You need answers. You could say the same thing. Like no one solidified the secondary in West Virginia yet.
Yeah.
You think you got answers in Garnes and Hollis Jr. and you're looking at the safeties where Aubrey Burks moved down. Like yeah, you may have some answers, but we don't know yet. So yeah, it's like that all across the league, and probably at this point, we've talked about Penn State. They have questions in secondary at receiver, at offensive line. Like there's a lot of questions that have to be answered this year. So I think at this point, with all the transfers and everything that's going on, you're going to have more of this, where you think you may know a team, but when it comes down to like week 3 or 4, that there's something that maybe they were better in one area and then thought that they were going to be strong in another. All of a sudden, there's injuries there. So that's what makes the game so much fun. That's why it's so hard to predict these things because you just don't know how it's all going to play out. But I think when that's kind of why I threw 7 teams in there. Like, okay, there's no one solidified anything. There's nothing across the board. That's why when you really look at Oklahoma State, like they returned one of the most production of most of the country. They're fourth.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you're going just based off experience, now that second defense was outside of the top 80 in every significant defensive category. So how much does that 10 starters really mean, right?
Yeah.
It was
It's
first
either
year.
means they're really
It
bad
was
still, or they're just
it
going to get
was
better.
under a first year defensive coordinator. So how much can they turn around? That it takes time to build. So we'll see. It's a wait and see. And I think this year, you know, without the Oklahoma came with questions a few times, and you kind of can go back prior where TCU had Boykin and Baylor was doing her thing with Art Briles. Like yeah, you could say it was wide open at like top 2 or 3, but now you're really digging teams where there's people out there saying that, well, look what Colorado has.
Yeah.
And I've got them way down there. And there's other people like, no,
I got
Colorado
them
ain't
way
going
down
to do
there too.
anything. And I don't want to like, it was hard for me to really not to put BYU as far as it did. Like I have UCF far just because I think there's way too much hype coming out of there. Like I'm not seeing, didn't see it last year, thought they would struggle. What changed from last year? Like, did
Yeah.
they get bigger all of a sudden? So I don't know if they got that much bigger. It's going to take another toll. They didn't grab that much depth. I think Arizona State and Cincinnati was slam dunk to the bottom of the conference, but you don't know exactly what Cincinnati is going to have with Satterfield. They could turn it around all of a sudden. So you don't know how kids are going to respond to new
Well, this is
coaching.
what I mean.
You
You
don't know how
can't
they're going to respond to adversity in week 1 or 2. So
you
I
can't you
think that's what makes college football so much fun because these aren't professionals. At the end of the day, these are just young men that are still learning the game.
well, this is what I'm saying. Like you can't say this stuff in the Big Ten or the SEC. You're not going like, well, Northwestern if they get hot, or Indiana if they get hot.
Oh,
Like,
like
no.
it's Michigan, Ohio State,
Yeah.
and it's Alabama, Georgia, possibly LSU,
That's
and
it.
everybody else. And
That
that's fine because those are very, very good programs and very good teams. But
yeah.
outside of that, there's only 2 teams out of each conference that you can really say, "Yep, those are your 2." Now,
Now,
once in a while, you can throw Wisconsin, but where's Wisconsin been? Right? Michigan's probably going to take a huge step back now that Harbaugh's out there. So you're really looking at Ohio State. How good is Ohio State with Will Howard? So is the Big Ten really that good? This is the team. I
no.
mean, how good is the Big Ten when you need Rutgers to join a conference to get on TV in New York City? So how enjoyable is that conference?
My guess is West. So for West Virginia's floor, we already talked about their ceiling because ceiling, I think we both can agree is they can get to the Big 12 championship. Mountaineer fans aren't going to like this, but I think it's ninth place in the Big 12. The only reason I'm saying that far down, you could probably finish ninth in the conference and still be 7-5, 8-4. because there could be so many tiebreakers going on in that middle part of the conference where
that
if
are
things just go
nonsense.
if things just go the wrong
Nonsense
way, you go
tiebreakers.
4-5 and there's a four-way tie that 4 different teams have a 4-5 record, you may be the team that's not. There's no way of telling how that's all gonna shake out, but I think that's why ninth is probably the furthest I see them going down, but I there's just no way unless we talked yesterday, like, unless they just have an onslaught of injuries or the league is just incredibly good and we just didn't see it coming. There's no way that they're not a top 10 team in the Big 12. 9, probably still pushing it. I think they're easily a top 7, 8 team for sure, but if we're really gonna get down to the weeds, I'd say 9 is the worst that they could do.
I'll say 6. If without health reasons, I say 6, and it'll be nonsensical tiebreakers that they didn't even play that team, and
Yeah.
you're doing like 2 teams removed because they lost to Oklahoma State, but then Oklahoma State beat them, a team they didn't play, and then it happened in baseball where you really had to like dive through each after each weekend, be like, all right, well, how does it stack up? And, they're fighting against teams that they didn't play. So
Well,
that's
you get
basically, and if you have one bad weekend against one of the mid teams, but they ended up upsetting one of the top 4 teams one weekend, well, it's just it is what it is at that point. So
yeah.
that's what the only really, you may be 2 losses but finish 5th in this league. So that's kind of where you're at right now in the Big 12. And I only have West Virginia right now on 2 Big 12 losses and finishing 3rd, and that's just because Oklahoma State will have the tiebreaker. So, but they may not end up finishing. They always do the tiebreaker, right? They'll say, "Oh, 5 teams finished second in the Big 12," but that's not true because there's only one 2 seed that will go to Dallas.
Yeah.
So there's not a real tie. Like I'm probably the old school approach, like whoever gets the 1 seed's a champion. Like, sorry, like you can say there's all these ties, but whoever got the 1 seed going to the postseason, that's your regular season champion. So West Virginia hasn't had luck, but they haven't taken care of business in the manner that they should to be in the top of the ranks. So if I think West Virginia takes care of business, I think they'll finish 3rd, but yeah, some kooky thing with the standings, they could finish 4th or 5th even with 2 losses.
So, dark horses, this is what we're going to close out with. Just any team, I would say probably outside of how many teams you thought could win the league. So, I said probably 5 could win the league. So
It's 7, so I'm about to really dig deep here.
yeah, so you can I have a little bit easier, but I'm going to go I'll make it a little bit more interesting. I'm not just going to go all the 6 team and go Kansas or UCF or Iowa State at 7 or 8. I'm going to go with you know what? I'll go TCU. No, I'll go Colorado. I was going to go TCU. I like Josh Hoover. I think he's a really good quarterback. Sonny Dykes, I feel like probably still has enough there to do something, but I don't know if it's to win the league. Colorado is a team that I think everybody thinks is either really good and going to win the Big 12 or they're not good at all and they're not even going to be bowl eligible. Like there's no in between. But of these teams that are dark horse candidates. Like, I mean, when you have probably the best quarterback in the league, you have probably the best athlete in the league. I mean, you have to at least throw him a bone. So I'll do that here. Prime, I'm not going to be completely on your hit list, but I think they're the one team that could really make some noise if they can find some consistency up front on that offensive line. It's been a freaking nightmare up there for them over just in that 1 year, but we'll see how that offensive line comes together. They got a lot of new pieces. I think it was like 15 offensive linemen that transferred in. It's an insane amount of number or insane amount of players that transferred in. And I don't know. We'll see if they can kind of replicate what TCU did a few years ago. I doubt it, but that's the one team I'll go with as a dark horse.
I really don't have a dark horse since I picked so many.
Arizona State.
I would say Arizona is my dark horse the way I've talked about them, but I haven't had a Kansas, which there's people that says Kansas going to win the Big 12. So is that really a dark horse? I'll go crazy and just say you know, something tells me BYU is going to be better this year, and that rivalry with Utah, they have to be at play at Utah, so I'm not sure they can get it done.
BYU?
but I'm gonna just go Colorado.
Okay.
For no other reason other than you got two really talented guys there. Um, and that's about it. Like I don't. There's nothing out of that bottom. Let's see, that's seven. So the bottom of my nine there that I can say, hey, this is the team that can make a run because there's nothing. I can't really make an argument other for the out of for any of those teams because I want to pick BYU because they've always been physical, but they just ended so poorly last year that
Oh
it's
yeah.
like there's no momentum going forward. Yes, they can absolutely turn it around, and I would not be shocked if they were, in October there was some, whispers like, "Oh, BYU can make a move here." But I'll just get Colorado just because of the talent of Sanders and Hunter. That's like the only reason. I don't know what else they got going on for them. They've been a mess on offensive line. Defensively, they're okay, but you're really hoping that hey, let's go score 50 points in year two. If that's the case for them.
Well, this is really it's not off topic because it's the Big 12. But did you see the Oklahoma State thing that came out the other day about the NIL deal that they're doing?
I haven't seen all the
The
QR codes. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I understand there's probably fascinating creative ways to do it and do it as a part of the uniform. But you mean to tell me that someone's going to zoom in that far and has a really good phone camera to do it? I know my camera's not doing it. I got an iPhone 15 or whatever, 14. I don't even know what number it is.
that
But
was your first mistake getting an iPhone, but
uh,
carry on.
true, true. But I mean, I don't understand the point. Like you're gonna have to zoom in. That's asking way too much. Instead, what they should do is like put it up on the video board where everyone can see it and roll through it during like the pregame or something. Say, here's the QR code for this player, and this player, this player, this player. I don't know. It's a
It'd
weird
be
thing.
even easier. There's this whole thing called the internet. And they have a
Yeah,
team. They
just
have a
go
team.
online
They
and
have
donate the
team
money.
roster on the internet, and you could put on that scoreboard or announce it on social media that if you want to fund a certain player, get their
Have
QR
at it.
code. Get their QR code on the team roster on the team website. Boom, there. But I still think it's a fun idea that they have them because you're sitting at home and they have it on the kid. I mean, they get close up on TV and he turns around. Boom, there's the QR code. You're really looking for it, but
It might come
hopefully
home one
someone from the
day.
PR department is smart enough to put that code or a link on their team page, which I mean, who knows? Maybe you can't do that on the team page. I don't know, but then they could, whatever their their NIL trust or whatever it is, you can put it on that website with team roster. Hopefully someone's smart enough to do that, but
Ollie Gordon may be making a bunch of
we don't
money.
live in the brightest society right now. We may have some nice technology, but we don't live in the brightest.
Let's just hope Ollie Gordon's not getting cash apped or whatever the however that process is working with the QR code thing. Hopefully he's not getting a lot of that money on October whatever it is, 5th or whatever when they play West Virginia because then you know that he probably had a big day. So hopefully his bank account's pretty dry just for that Saturday. But I think that's going to do it for us. We pretty much hit everything on the Big 12. We've got our preseason champ, Utah, right? Well, you said Oklahoma State, but Utah winning in the regular season. But it's wide slap open, and West Virginia is certainly going to be in the mix. Talked about it a million times. We'll talk about it a million and one more times. That's scheduled. The first 5 games of Big 12 play are going to be the true barometer for this team. If they can get out of that and get to that back half of the schedule, they can really start to put something together, get some momentum, and maybe roll their way into Dallas. So we'll see what happens. But that's going to do it for us here today. That's Christopher Hall. I'm Schuyler Callan. Make sure you hit the subscribe button here on our YouTube page at West Virginia on SI. Follow us on X at SI_WVU. And while you're at it, if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead, throw some comments in there. Let us know who you think's going to win the Big 12, your dark horse, all that stuff that we covered today. Let us know your thoughts. We'll be sure to interact with you there in the comment section on YouTube. But that's going to do it for us for the next couple of days. We'll be back on Sunday to talk the college football playoff and make our prediction there. Where West Virginia fits in, how close can they get if they don't make it. We'll get into all that stuff on Sunday. But until then, we'll see you there.